Hi, everybody. It's your Force of Friendship girlfriend, Chrisette, all the way from Detroit, Michigan. And I am so excited to be here with my girlfriends from all across the country. We have Gloria Mayfield Banks, and she's in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm here with Sabrina Goodwin Monday in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and Katrina Harris Earl all the way. I think she's in Oakland, California. You know, she's all over the place. But we are so excited to be here on today, and we have an exciting show for you on today. But you know, I want to tell you a little bit about Marcia, so you know who she is. She is a phenomenal, well-respected social activist and a communication specialist. She is the president, you guys, of M&M Dyson LLC, which is an exclusive national and international consultancy in matters of business development and marketing and political strategies. When I say she is a bad sister, she is. And one of the things that I love about Marcia is the fact that she is a champion for women's rights globally for over 20 years. And she is an advocate for quality in education for children everywhere. Well, you guys, you're getting ready to hear the interview or the conversation with Marcia. When I tell you it was so rich, it had so much information, but let me tell you something. Inquiring minds want to know. She gave us a lot of the background, the controversy about the movie, things that we didn't know. So we want you to listen to her, and then the girlfriends are going to come back and we're going to discuss the tea. Yep, we're going to talk about some of the controversy that went on behind the scenes of the Harriet Tubman movie. And we're also going to talk about it in the context of being girlfriends and what Harriet Tubman's life says about us as women and how we can be great girlfriends like Harriet Tubman was to the slaves.
Thank you for having me. You're right. It was love at first sight. I feel the same way about you as you feel about me. And I knew that I was okay that after sitting on the stage for a while during the unfortunate services for Congressman Conyers, I ran backstage with my shoes off and I roll like this, you know, when you get tired, because I'm authentic everywhere. And then representing the South Side of Chicago, we keep it real. But I think, and I'm glad that you all had the opportunity to see the film. It was a really important film for me because Harriet Tubman was the subject of my very first sermon that I preached. And
wow.
Some of the backgrounds for the film really has a spiritual context, especially for, I think, women everywhere, for people everywhere, but especially Black women. And so first of all, the first controversy is the casting. There was a lot of backlash from Black Hollywood because the actress Cynthia Evero is British. She's British and West Indian. So people were saying that why aren't you sourcing, as an African American woman, Harriet, from the rich pool of women that we have here? Some are Oscar winners, some are Emmy winners. And so I had to push back and say, this is such a limited field when you're Black in the industry that you have to allow people by their talent to do and get what they can get. And so my thing was, and when we saw Black Panther, most of the people we talked about it being on the continent, well, in Africa, they call African Americans Americans. It's just now during the year of return that they are starting to appreciate our Americanness within our Africanness, and we need to know that. So all that cast or American acting like that they were Africans, you weren't. Because people say, how come you didn't even source all the extras from Africa? Why aren't, except for maybe one or two people, aren't they from Africa? And I said, Forrest Whitaker played Idi Amin, right? So I want to just show how narrow that was, that we have such limited opportunities for the capability of performing that art if you're in the genre of movie making. But when you look at Harriet, and the importance of that film, to me, that I almost didn't want people that we have thought should have had that role, because she kind of like is in the backdrop if you don't know her, so you could really see what this Harriet person was. So for me, it was very refreshing. And though I know a lot of Black women actresses who I consider friends, I would have been lost in their own personality than I would the subject myself. Though Cynthia has a great repertoire of work from Broadway, singing. She actually did the singing in her film. I thought it was Janelle Monáe, but it wasn't. It was actually Cynthia, and her talents are just off the chain. So that's the one and first controversy. And then second, of course, is it wasn't filmed actually in Maryland where Harriet Tubman had her life. It was filmed in Virginia because, of course, with the taxing that they have here in the District of Maryland, Columbia, it was more affordable for it to be done in Virginia, and the landscape was much better as well. But even before then, on a spiritual level, when I went up to Maryland and Broward County, where Harriet Tubman actually was, and people think that the film or her life was deep south. It wasn't. She was right here in Maryland, right outside of Washington, D.C. And people think like, darn, is that the South? Yes, it is. But when you're talking about transversing landscape for 100 miles without a road, without a compass, without literacy, it was like going 1,000 miles. And people have to also remember during her time, when she was running away from slavery, that her husband was a free man. As you saw in the film, people think that we're all enslaved, but it wasn't. Harriet Tubman worked with Black free people, and she worked with the white abolitionists as well. But when you go to Broward County and you see in the film, it seems as if she has this blinded faith when she walked in the water. But that's not quite, you know, one thing, First Lady, that we realize that God always prepares us unknowingly for the things in which are going to happen in the future. It's not like it's a miracle. God, not in my own lifestyle, life, has ever taken a magic wand. There was no genie of a cross that I could rub. There was always some adversity that prepared you for your real task. And when I looked at the Moses biblical character and how he was chosen and saved, you know, by the nursemaid of the king's sister, and how he became a leadership, which meant he had to study. He had the opportunity to see people enslaved that he didn't even know were his own, to then liberate, have this kinship when he was out watching this man being brutalized by one of the Egyptian overseers. So fast forward to here, Harriet, is that Harriet, when she was hitting her head with that weight in the store, that is a famous story, that because of that, they did not sell her, which was miraculous because they thought she was useless and damaged goods. The fact that that owner kept her on meant that she had to do these other labors. So the winter time, she actually had to go into the waters where it was cold. Remember, she didn't have boots. She didn't have North Face. She didn't have Uggs. She didn't have Hunter up to the knee boots. She didn't have a hat. She would go into the cold waters as a child, captured muskrats because the fur was heavier in the winter and more profitable for her owner. So she got familiar with the waters. She got familiar crossing in the cold water. So when we see her going, and you just feel the chill of it, either for the fact that she could do this, she had been prepared to cross those kind of cold waters. And because she was also in the water, she knew how to moor her foot so that she would not go into some of the trappings under the water. And that to me was very poignant when you know that that's the case in her life. And the other thing that I say too is that what came out is that we know that she was illiterate. But when I think about today, the lack of history teaching, the dumbing down of scholarships in our school from elementary to universities, through her illiteracy, she was more literate than some of our students today. Because if they lost their smartphone, they would really become the artificial intelligence. And because she had this relationship with God, and one of the scriptures that I hold dear to my heart and I wear it like pearls around my neck, is that God will not have you ignorant. And Harriet Tubman is proof of that. Illiterate, knew the Bible, couldn't read it, but she had this one-on-one relationship. And so what Casey Lemons, we talked about this in some of the forums after we saw the private screening of the films. And the important things about having Casey Lemons as a director, if you saw Eve's bio, You know that she always captured the mystique of the Africanness in African American women, the conversations in the mirror, and that has a lot of connotation for Africanness, you know, and even in Asian culture, how mirrors reflect who speaks to you. You don't only see yourself, but you see the ghost of yourself, and you see the ghosts of those ancestors that you may left behind. I think that Casey Lemons really captured the spirituality of a woman who had a real relationship with God when she felt on the ground, and how she captured it like the play Fella, these not orishas, but this sense of nature. And I think that for me in the film, what Casey wanted to show is that deep relationship with nature and Harriet Tubman, not only in knowing the waters, but also how she would embrace her only friend on that trajectory, Stella Polaris, which is the North Star. And she was prepared for that too, because she lived, you know, if you come to Maryland, we're along the Potomac and the Chesapeake Bay here and the Outer Banks, it's nothing but water and maritime. So she had already learned how to read the stars. So that's why she could be told, just watch this, watch the constellation, look for your friend Stella, and that would tell you how to go north. So nothing was by accident. She was prepared. God will prepare you for what it's going to be, and you don't even know why. So I tell my sisters, girl, and I think this was where we connected on this too. I mean, we were, you know, the First Lady, we were like just the nines of what, you know, it was like fabulous, like, oh, girl, okay, I got you. But one thing that I'm willing to do, which is in the film, which I think captures so many of our hearts, especially I believe the women here, because I think that as iron sharpens iron, so does everyone's continence, and your friends must be like you, Lady Chrisette, is that it reminded me when she went and says, I don't care, you could be in your fancy clothes, your beautiful wives, you know, your clean houses, but I remember the groans and the moans of my people, and that informs my social activism. You got to go back. We ain't free unless we're all free, right? And that was the whole meaning of Dr. King. So I mean, I want to hear the other sisters, but those are some of the real takeaways, and the fact that the top of the film, Casey was sharing that when she was going up on a hill, and of course, you know, Cynthia's not a diva, but she had a moment like, you know, I'm tired, it's rain, it's this and that. And so Casey got her out of her tent, and with one take, she was able to do this climbing up this hill, and it had just rained, so it was really difficult. She wasn't harmed, but a rainbow came out. It's like a sign from God, like, shut up, do your work, I'm with you, this is an important film, you know. And so those are some of the backdrops that I know firsthand, and then I'd like to hear from you if you have any questions, if you notice something that I can, you know, expound upon.